Hello, and welcome back to the Reach In Talk Show, where we talk all things life and wellness. And of course, I'm yours truly, your favorite host, the Dr. Nicole Lynette. Look, family, we've been working through these sessions for the last few weeks. Conversations have been hard, but I believe they've been helpful. And they're very necessary conversations to have. For those of you who don't know, April is actually Child Abuse Prevention Month. And as a recognition for those who have been victimized, those survivors, we want to make sure that we bring enlightenment to people who don't understand the trauma of child sexual abuse, and those who do understand, to let you know that you're not by yourself and there are resources available to you. And to unpack all of this, some of this information, we know we've talked about, sexual prevention in our schools, in our churches, in our communities. But today we have a topic that is very, very rare, and it's about male survivors of sexual abuse. And to help us unpack this topic today is none other but a gentleman that drove all the way from Dallas, Texas to help us do this. Let's welcome Mr. Kendal Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here. I'm grateful to God for this opportunity to be able to share it and help somebody else.
Okay. Well, I thank you. I'm honored that you actually took the time, because the topic today is not an easy topic, and it's definitely not an easy topic for men. But before we jump into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe family.
Well, if you start off in my life, I actually didn't find out until I was 23 that I was adopted.
Okay.
So I don't even know my biological parents.
Right.
So I don't even know who I look like.
Okay.
But I'm just grateful to God that I'm here. And that I have a purpose in life to be able to help somebody else. And so Kendal is the one that they used to just say was the bad boy, always the annoying. The teachers used to say the one talk too much and distractions. The class clown, just loud and just me. I've always had this eternal joy, and that's what God gave to me. But I didn't know that God gave it to me.
Right.
Until I got older and realized where it came from.
Okay.
But it was just something in me all the time. And then I was only child, kinda.
Right.
And so, I love people. And so just being around other people all the time, I guess, I was that annoying brother, the little brother, oh God, the annoying cousin. Oh God, here Kendal, just that type of person. But it was always love. Love always came from in here.
Okay. So you were adopted. Okay. So, but all of that joy and the people, being the people person, even as a young boy, and all of that, it kind of led you, especially the talking, quite a bit. It led you down a path of service and community engagement. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, the community service came from the different issues that I had in my life.
Right.
It wasn't just something that I said, oh, I'm going to just serve people or I want to help people. It came out of trials and tribulations and very dark places, hurt places that caused me to have empathy and compassion for other people. I don't think if I experienced some of those things, I would never be in the leadership position that I am today to be able to help people and understand. Because some of the things that I endured, when I think about it, I was like... a lot of people, if I did not have was introduced to Jesus, I probably would have lost my mind and probably
Right.
tried to commit suicide because
Right.
I was in some very dark places
Right.
that I did never want to experience,
Right.
but they happen.
Right.
And
Right.
so because they happen, I can't just not just say dwell on them,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
learn from those different struggles,
Right.
so that I could help somebody else not go through it because I know how I felt.
Right.
And I know that sometimes when you go through certain things, it's like something or the enemy just shuts your mouth for you
Right.
to be able to tell. So that's why people are angry,
Right. Yes.
frustrated,
Yes.
depressed,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Yes.
schizophrenic, bipolar. They just come up with all of these different mental
Terminologies.
issues.
Right.
And I didn't want to be in that place.
Right.
I never wanted to stay there, so I always prayed for me to be able to get out of
Right.
those things. And so that's where I'm at today. I've overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go back and help somebody else understand what they were going through. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no place for me to be able to judge them.
Right. Right.
I can't judge nobody else or look down on anybody else for whatever they've done,
Right.
because look at what I've done.
Right.
And so that's how I can help love other people past there, because I had to do it for myself. Right.
So in that in-service position, I was reading, you're actually, you're running for an office.
Right. I'm running for mayor of the city of Dallas. I'm a write-in candidate. Some situations happened where I didn't get on the actual ballot, but I did apply to become a write-in candidate.
Right.
A write-in candidate means that you have to write my name in order for the vote to be able to count.
Right.
But I'm running for mayor because I want to unite voices for a better Dallas, meaning the voices of children, the voices of mothers, of women, voices of the senior citizens, voices of the regular person that's going through high property taxes, or the streets and the sidewalks and
Right.
all of these different things that go on in the city, and the crime and the police department, and then there's so many social issues that are going on.
Right.
I feel like we tend to overlook them,
Right.
and that's why there's a lot of problems plaguing big cities, because we don't deal with the
Social.
social issues that are going on with humans.
Right.
And so I want to be able to deal with social issues as well as leading people as well.
Okay, that sounds remarkable. And you also became the CEO of a nonprofit.
Yes. It's called the Grapevine HIV/AIDS organization, where our mission is to educate youth, parents, and pastors concerning HIV/AIDS through social media and community involvement. You know, HIV and AIDS came in our community. It was in our community, but really took full platform was in 1997. And so it was in our community totally then. And then we became the highest number. And so when I started to, and only the reason I got into it is I contracted HIV when I was 19 years old through oral sex.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that you can contract HIV that way, but you can contract HIV through oral sex. People don't know when you brush your teeth,
Right.
the gums are open, and then a lot of people don't know that semen is blood. So when it's that wet, filmy is when it's most potent.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that, but I try to teach them so that they can know that you be careful and respect your own body, because you're the only one with that body.
Right. So, in being in the education field, so for your social, political platform, How do, when you're having these conversations and you're talking in the public, especially in the political arena, how is that conceived?
To be honest, most of the time that I've talked have been in ministry or organizational. I haven't yet to address it politically. There are some things that I want to be able to do politically that I see that needs to be done for youth. Some things that have been taken away socially, and those are the things that I want to start to fight for, to be in position to fight for those things, and then I can start using my own testimony inside of it, just like I'm sharing now. It just hasn't been brought up in that as arena. Of yet, until you're the one that's
bringing it on to the platform. Yeah, I'm known to do stuff like that. Okay, but I appreciate you allowing me this opportunity. So my question is, so you shot for mayor, you're taking a shot at mayor.
Yes.
Why not city council representative?
I did that when I was 30 in Atlanta.
Okay.
I went for District 3. But the reason I want to deal with mayor is that Dallas has a weak mayor system, which you really get to have a platform. It's like a bully place to be able to talk. So you're the face of Dallas for the city, then you're the face of Dallas for the state, then you're the face of Dallas for the president, and then you're the face of Dallas for international issues or international conversations.
Right.
And so that it'll give me a platform to address it on a national, international, global stage that I feel like things change when you're able to affect policy.
Right.
They've affected policy when it concerned us as black and brown people.
Right.
But I want to affect policy to be able to uplift people.
Okay. Absolutely. That's amazing. So let's shift some gears. So you're also an author.
I am.
You are an author.
I'm an award-winning author.
Oh, award-winning author. Excuse me. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
But award-winning author, you have 2 books here that are personally your books.
Yes.
And that's Turning Pain into Praise.
Yes.
And Turning Pain into Praise,
yes,
and Unconditional Love. So I'm interested in turning pain into praise. So do you sing? Do you think, or is just your expression of love for God?
I was, I told you I was real loud, but I love God so much that I praise loud.
Right.
And so when I used to go in churches, Rose used to get up and leave. And move to the back, or they would go somewhere. So it was kind of like, it was a shame for me to be able to praise. And then one day they just made me feel so bad at church. I went home and I just cried.
Oh, wow.
Cried because I said, God, I just do this for you. I'm not doing it for show. I do this as just how I love you. So he gave me the scripture in Isaiah. It says, I created the fruit of your lips.
Yeah.
And whoever hears from afar or near, he said, I will heal them.
Right.
So he said, I created those fruits. Right. And so it was something that he gave me, this title, because most people have turning pain into purpose, turning pain into power. But if you actually go look up that title, I'm the only one with praise in the world. So I know that he had specifically something for me, and that voice and that praise, he uses it. Because honestly, my praise has actually kept me alive.
Yes. Oh, talk about it. See, you can make me check the leg up in here. That's interesting that you say that, because sometimes when I give praise in church, I have this voice as well. It doesn't come out all the time, but it comes up. And a lot of times, and that's what I love about my show, about reaching in, because sometimes we're looking at the surface of things, but we need to look a little closer.
Right.
And that comes with the whole platform of you're looking at my glory, but you don't know my story.
Right.
You don't know the things that I've been through. And so not knowing, and we're going to talk about that place of pain soon, but when people don't understand your place of pain, then they can't understand your level of level of praise.
Absolutely.
So, and usually, the more pain you suffer,
the more
when the Lord bring you on out, the more praise you have, right?
Yeah.
You know, we can have church up in here now, but I can attest to that. Because my praise that was one church. It's so funny. They held a meeting on me because I would run around the church. Well, you don't know when the presence of God kind of hits you. Sometimes it causes different types of expression. Because praise is an expression, and that's why you can't judge anyone's praise because everyone has a different type of praise.
Absolutely.
There's not one isolated praise unto God.
Right.
But whatever that is, and when you said thunderers. Well, thunder shakes up stuff.
Right.
And praise, we're going in the word now. I told them last week I'm an ordained minister. They don't know. Just in case they don't know, they know now. But it reminds me when Jehoshaphat went out to battle, what was sent before them was the praisers and the worshipers, because the Bible says that praise sets up ambushments in the heavenlies against the enemy, right? So when praise goes forth, and the Bible says God inhabits the praises of his people, right? So if he inhabits that means when you begin to praise, he stands up in the midst of your situation. Woo! I'm feeling a little something right now. But anyways, we're not having church. We are the church, but we're not having church today. But in turning pain into praise, we really want to get to the meat of our show today.
Right.
About that pain. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about that pain.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. I'm so glad that you can rejoin us here on the Reach In Talk Show, where we're talking male survivors of sexual abuse. And today in our studio, we actually have this wonderful young man here who's made it his business to drive all the way in from Dallas to help us unpack this hard topic. So again, let's welcome back Mr. Kendal Richardson.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we went to break, we were talking about your book on turning pain into praise and how, people don't really know your story and the depthness on how you've been delivered and how God has intervened and how God has changed some things in your life and taken that pain and actually made it purposeful, made it powerful, and also made it praiseworthy.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of that. Now, we talked about your actual books that you wrote solely, which is Turning Pain into Praise and Unconditional Love. But there's also another book, which was a compilation book, and it is called Echoes. This is Echoes, and it's talking about the stories of male survivors overcoming sexual trauma. And I wanted to really have this conversation because oftentimes the stigma about sexual abuse is an adult male to a young girl. and or either an adult male to a young boy. And very seldom do we hear about when the women who are perpetrators, be it women, they abuse.
Yes.
And not often do we talk enough about peer on peer abuse. And so, and let's not talk about men who have been abused as boys, because not oftentimes do the world, society has just not been such a safe place for men to disclose and to expose their pain and the root of their pain, their anger, their fears, their anxiety, all these emotions that we attribute to that's a woman. That's what women do. You know, I talk about it often when we have these conversations, how when we have a little boy and a little girl, and if they both fall and cut their knee open, you know, or split their, you know, bruise their knee, we nurture the girl, but we tell the boy to get up, you know, get up, man. You, that ain't nothing, dust that off. And immediately we don't realize, but when you do that, you're teaching that little boy not to even acknowledge his pain. And so when a young boy grows up as a man, and this is the mental model that has been instilled in him, psychologically, emotionally, and mentally, that men are not supposed to feel. Men are not, and even if you feel, men are not supposed to acknowledge pain. Then it creates a prison, an emotional, psychological prison for men to just harbor and to have compound issues that they don't know how to deal with. They don't know how to express. And so that brings me to your story about the stories of male survivors overcoming sexual abuse, because sexual abuse is not something we want to talk about even as women. So I know the statistics, according to the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control, is 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused and 1 in 13 boys will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. But when I read your book, this compilation, and it talks about a chapter in here, talk about numbers that echo. And it says up to 1 out of 6 men report having unwanted direct sexual contact with an older person by or before age 16. Non-direct contact sexual behavior, 1 in 4 men report boyhood sexual victimization. So the statistics that are here, and I was on another site, and it was about men who've experienced sexual abuse as well, and they actually have the same, well, their statistics is 1 in 6 boys or 1 in 6 men, and here is 1 in 4. So what I'm seeing here is that as one of the facts is, a lot of times when we look at statistical data, we're looking at reported data, not that which is actual data. And so we know that any statistical data that we see, the 1 in 4 girls, the 1 in 6 boys, the 1 in 13, 1 in 4, however it is still underreported. And so this is a dilemma, and we need to address it. And so today I'm going to try and deviate from just the idea of just girls being sexually abused. I really want to talk about this male piece, because there are so many men suffering in silence because they have not had an opportunity or felt the freedom or the safety to be able to disclose. So there's many stories in this book, but for the sake of time, we're going to go directly to your story. And your story, I'm going to tell you all to get this book. It's a hard read, but it's a necessary read. And his story is on page 119. It's called Echoes, the Stories of Male Survivors Overcoming Sexual Trauma. And it's by Robert H. Marshall Jr. And I'm going to digress because I want him to share his story. So, you ready? Go ahead.
I want to thank Robert Marshall Jr. He's the pastor of Transformational Church International in Chicago, Illinois, that he came up with this idea and he set out for people all over the country to tell their different stories and come together, because that was something, I believe he was in college, and he was doing some, what do you call them? Theses or
a thesis on research
research paper, right. And that's what he decided to to deal with.
Right.
Because it was personal to him too.
Right.
But he really wanted to wake up the community on what was going on, and it's also happening to black men.
Yes.
That we really don't talk about in the African American community.
Yes.
That we need to start talking about. It's been going on a long time.
Yes, it has.
And so I'm here today to share my story and in hopes of helping somebody else come free today.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have to talk to Pastor Marshall and see if we can get him over this way.
Yes.
Because you're right. There are things there's an old saying, what goes on in our house stays in our house. We definitely harness that in our communities, right? And unfortunately, there are a lot of things that have gone on in our homes that have brought death, not necessarily physical death, but actual emotional death, mental death. And I love what you said about his purpose to wake up the community. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're here at Reach In, because we want people to stop just looking at things at face value. There's a story behind things. And let's find out what that is, because the only way we don't repeat history is we have to know history. In order to know history, you have to face history.
Right.
You have to acknowledge that it actually happened. And we cannot, a lot of times we treat the fruit of things, but we don't get to the root. And not understanding, if we don't get to the root, it's going to always produce fruit. So we do things backwards. So just in your story, so you are a survivor of sexual abuse, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so I was just reading your story. So would you like to share, like, when was as far as you can remember, when was your first encounter? What happened? You don't have to, go as far as you know.
When I was about 4, we played this game, house, doctor,
right,
hide and go get it, all of those,
right,
the dry humping and all of these different things. Well, it was some boys that were living in the building where my parents were. I think it was the landlord's grandchildren or something like that, but they used to, do those type of things. They used to, I used to play house, but they would never let me be the man. They didn't want me to play with the trucks. They wanted me to be over there making mud patties and food for when they get home. And doing things like putting a pillow in the stomach and having their babies.
Oh, wow.
Just already giving me a feminine role as a child. And so that's where the seed was planted on. And, my first experiences weren't natural. They were unnatural.
Right.
And so those were the seeds that kept planting on into my life. And then I guess about 8 years old, I had a neighbor. He taught me manipulation. He taught me shame and guilt. That's the first time I learned about Playboy magazines, because his father had in the attic had thousands of them.
Wow.
And so he was 14. I got introduced to oral sex and bribery. And these things that I learned from this one person. And then...
So you were 8 and he was 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tried to make me feel like it was my fault when I started crying.
Right.
And I remember those days he said, get out of here, get away from me, you cry baby, just things that I just want. And how he would get me is that I wanted to play the video game. So I don't know if it was, not that I went back to go do that, but I wanted to play the video game.
Right.
So it wasn't like I was always going to expect that every time, but it happened. Right.
So that could be, because we talk a lot about, in sexual abuse, about grooming.
Right.
So you're 8, he's 14. He got up on you, right? And then there are just things with conception with children, period. And that's what makes this so just outrageous, because children are children. So, and you've already been groomed and pretty much conditioned for certain things. So, okay, so you learned that, and then now your grandmother's next door neighbor,
Son,
12, yes.
tried to, at 12, use the video game again. But we were playing basketball, and he just kept rubbing on me while we were playing basketball, and he said, well, come in the house and let's play. So his dad was actually in the house while he did what he did, but I thought he was going to take me to the room and play, but he took me to the bathroom and sexually forced me oral sex into the point of ejaculation. And so he held me there and told me that, and they always use this, I'm going to tell your parents if you don't do it.
Right.
And my dad is already a strict dad.
Right.
So if you telling my dad something like
Right.
this,
Yeah.
I'd rather go to the police than to
Right.
have anybody tell my dad something, because I already had Kendall does this and Kendall does that.
Right.
Like, they would never think that. They would think Kendall was the
Right, perpetrator, and you weren't
Right.
the innocent one. You were
Right.
the one infiltrating. Right.
And so I had to go through this even at those ages.
Right.
Because it was always, yeah, Kendall did it. And they would believe other people before they would believe me.
Right.
Those were some of the hurtful things, when people would lie on me and your own parents would believe them because they know how you are.
Right.
Instead of believing me when I tried to tell you.
Right. And I think that's something valuable to state, because one of the part of the curriculums we talk about in our programs with my nonprofit Resuscitate Inc. is how to become a trusted adult. Because and what we teach in there about learning to listen to your children. And not only that, not have these compounded ideas about your children, because your children, let's just say little Johnny could be lying about all this, just up to no good, but this one thing may be true, and if you've already made up in your mind that everything is on little Johnny, then of course, then you may miss something, and that's dangerous, because just like in your situation, there where you were dealing with trauma, you were dealing with just darkness, and your fear of your parents not believing you. You can use the tissue there. Not believing you. That's what happens with a lot of our children today. A lot of our children are not believing. Why are our children out here doing some of the craziest things? Because sometimes we don't want to ask the hard questions.
Right.
And we automatically put stigmas on our children, right? I try to encourage parents, stop telling your child they're a bad child.
Right.
You know, children are not bad. They may make bad decisions. That's because they're children. But when something is going on with your child, why is your child so active in this area? Why is your child acting out like this? What's going on? But I think sometimes it's just convenient just to say, oh, that's just who they are. Oh, that's just how they act. And I'm sick of them acting that way. But to reach in and look a little closer and Paul say, wait a minute, let's talk, you know. But unfortunately, and, you know, things have gotten a little better now. Honestly, I think things have gone a little bit overboard. There's a little less balance. But I believe we need to learn to listen to children. We have too many children committing suicide. We have too many kids out here being susceptible to gangs and perpetrators and all of this. And a lot of that has to do with these children are getting more of the attention, even though it's not positive attention. It's toxic attention, because they don't feel seen, they don't feel loved, they don't feel heard, and they, you know, unfortunately, you have strict parents. You don't believe that you don't think they're gonna believe you anyway, right? So now you're feeling muted. Then you get with people that, whether it's perversion, violation, or whatever it is, they unlock that muteness from you, but it's at a cost. And it's a high cost. So A lot of people don't know. My son. When he was my eldest son, he's deceased. He was murdered at 25, and it wasn't on the streets with gangs. But that's a whole nother show. But I know that he went through a season of gangs, and there were some things there. And when you want to talk about it with your family, they don't want to hear it.
Right. They don't
Right.
wanna hear it.
They don't want to hear it, but that's why we're here, so we can help unlock some things with people, and so that people can hear it. They can turn us off, but at the end of the day, if we want to see something different with our children, we're gonna have to look at things like this: sexual abuse, especially of our men. What's wrong with our men? There has not been too many places I've gone where men have not come to me and said, "You know what, Dr. Nicole? Thank you, because you know what? It happened to me when I was a boy." But they feel safe enough to disclose that information. Why is our society not safe enough for our men to disclose their pain? We got to do better, because we need our men to be healthy, and we need our men to be whole. And hurt people are hurt people.
Absolutely.
And so and I'm sorry that all happened to you. I know it wasn't my fault, but it wasn't your fault either. And I hate that happened to you, but you are just a representation of thousands of men from generation to generation to generation. It's still happening right now. I was driving a school bus, and I witnessed a little boy get on the school bus. The teacher's right there. I'm right here, the driver. The student's on the bus. And a little boy was sitting, maybe like the second seat. And he was sitting on the seat. And then other little boy came in and sat down. He immediately just reached over to that little boy and started fondling him in his privates. He immediately started doing that, as if no one else was there. Now, before I became educated on how you're supposed to handle that, in our company, they say when you have things like that happen, you're supposed to report it to a supervisor. And I reported it to a supervisor. And what they did, they removed me from that route. So I don't know if it was reported. I don't know if a young man, but now that I know better, I was actually supposed to call law enforcement or Child Protective Services myself. I wasn't aware of that, because Texas is a reporting state. But we're going to talk about that. I talked about that last week. But oftentimes people don't want to report, or your companies will tell you to report it to someone at the company. No, Texas is a reporting state. If you saw it, you witnessed it, you don't report it to the company first. You call someone, and then after that, if you want to report it to the company, you do that. So, and I'm just saying that because here we are, we have places, the school buses, they have monitors, you have the schools, all of this. They're supposed to be places of safety. But now the question still remains, did those children get any help? Did they get any help? So, and then I'm thinking now, listening to you, if they didn't get any help, were they too at a point where, did that little boy go tell his parent when he got home that this little boy touched me? Or did they feel the shame? Did they feel the embarrassment? Or did they feel like, oh, I better not say nothing because, I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want my friend to get in trouble either. So I'm sorry that happened to you, and I appreciate you sharing that. But you put here the seeds of aggression, especially after the next door neighbor son raped you, and how it really pulled at your self-worth, right? So I circled this in your story. It says, as those seeds were fed through porn and the music culture of the 90s and the liberation of sex from females, I felt connected to what I had been feeling. Mm-hmm. So let's just unpack that just a little bit.
Well, I was, like I said, introduced to Playboys. So that was already something. And then finding porn, or be honest, I'm from Brooklyn, so it was nothing for them to be doing drugs
right
all in one room, and because they were like 22, 23, 24,
right,
and they would be watching porn.
Right.
Ain't nobody doing it, but y'all sitting there just watching it.
Right.
We were looking.
Right.
Like walking in and it's just on TV.
Right.
So those were, and then in the 80s they had the HBO had the naked mud wrestling. It was things that were always something.
Right.
And then of course I just felt like Little Kim. You know, all of these different people that talked about the sexual, being open with it, because you know most of the time guys could get away with talking about sex,
Right.
but it wasn't something for a female to be open to talking about sex like a man.
Right.
And so I felt like, wow, somebody got liberated, and then I take to people who are open and are able to talk about something that they've been wanting to say.
Right.
And so those are the things that I was talking about, where I saw where I could see myself as, because I really wanted to say things, but I couldn't because I was not in places or nobody would listen to that.
Right,
like my parents, I don't want to talk about that. We ain't not talking about. So they didn't. My parents didn't want to hear it. Even when I tried to, it didn't take it effect until I turned around and did the same thing that was done to me.
Right.
To younger males myself.
Right. Right.
And I think that that probably, I know that I was a victim, but it's I just, for me, it's been more pain to inflict somebody else with the same pain that I did. And I had to pray about it. I wrote about it. So publicly, I talked about it, but apologizing to people that I've abused myself. I don't think you can get any worse, because when you start hearing people like, you need to be under the jail, just kill them, castrate them, and then I just listened because, you know, they're talking about me too.
Right.
But God gave me a grace to be able to do and talk about this.
Yes.
Because there's so many rapists and so many molesters. And, you know, psychologists and different people saying you can't be rehabilitated. You're always going to stay that same way. And I'm a testament. You don't have to stay that way.
Right.
You don't have to, and it's not like something I woke up and just decided to do. I think in those moments of lust, it just blinded my judgment. And those were some of the things that I did. And I got caught the first time. The second time, they didn't report it. My own parents reported it. My parents turned me in because they said I needed some help. So when my lawyer really fought for me, because they used to have this child behavior system, and it was called ASAP. I think the unit was Adolescents of Sexes Offenders Program. And so when you're placed in a place by the courts, because the DA felt like I was a danger to society. He told me I was should be locked up in a cage, but I'm 17 years old. I don't know. I ain't never got in trouble before. Nothing of this magnitude.
Right.
But that's the way he kept talking about me. But she fought for me and said there's something special about this young man. And jail wouldn't be an option for him. I want him to be able to get therapy and help.
Right.
And so I was able to, when the church out in ICOG in Rockville, Maryland, you know, you're not supposed to be in the midst of
Children.
of the community because you're still fresh in your wound. So, but the church said yes, we still want them to come to church. And I think that gave me the liberation where I learned to praise, I learned to pray, I got baptized, and so with spiritual, with mental help,
Yes.
I'm at the place of being able to sit here today. Because if it wasn't for spiritual and the help
therapy,
of
yes.
therapy,
Yes.
plus my parents had to be there
Right.
every week for family therapy,
Yes.
where we finally got to address the things that they wouldn't listen to, but they were forced to have to listen to it now.
So this piece right here, this piece I believe is a piece because when you have and another thing, thank you for sharing because you don't have to be here because your story is unique in the position to where we talk about survivors. We talk about the perpetrators that are incarcerated, and we talk a lot about children, what the signs are of children that have been sexually abused. But a lot of times those signs don't incorporate the fact that they're abusing. And I was talking with, in one of our curriculums is called Avoiding Risky Behaviors. And we talk about learned behavior. And on record, the youngest now, they don't convict and make a child file as a sexual offender this young anymore. But on the record, the youngest child to file as that had to file as a sexual sex offender in the state of Texas is 8 years old. Now you tell me why an 8-year-old has to file as a sex offender. Because here's the question. Where did he get that from? He's 8.
Right.
Where's that info? How did he learn? Not everybody just wake up like you say and say, oh, I'm just going to offend somebody. I'm just sexually violate someone, one of my peers. It still takes me back to that little boy who's about first grade that just got on the bus and the other little boy just started fumbling him. That's a problem. He's seen that somewhere. He's experienced that somewhere. And it's been frequent enough that it was like, you see the kids putting their thumbs in their mouth. That's how he touched that little boy. So this piece is the piece we don't want to address.
Right.
Not just in our communities, black and brown communities. I have talked with people in affluent communities, inner city communities. Very seldom do people want to talk about this piece. And I find that because from our experience, when we go and we train and we try and provide information, there is not one place we haven't been where we have not had disclosures. And some of them are first-time disclosures. And you know what? A lot of them are from men. And they're across the board, Caucasian, Asian, African American, because sexual abuse does not discriminate. It covers across. Not only that, I listened to when you were talking about how you can have an international platform. It's interesting because with Resuscitate Inc., one of our plans and our vision is to create an international table because child sexual abuse is an international issue.
Right.
Right? And I remember I met a consulate from India. And after doing research, I found it very odd that usually the statistical data highlights girls as being top of, that list of survivors and victims. But in India, I found that the boys had the highest number. And I just was doing research and found that. And I just thought, I was like, wow, this is different. But I was glad to see it. Not that I want to see it at all. That's why we do what we do at Resuscitate. We want this to stop. We know it's not going to stop overnight, but child sexual abuse is preventable.
Right.
It is so preventable. But if we don't talk about it, Kendall, how are we going to do anything about it? And if we don't challenge it, it's not going to change. That's why I love the story. Because what you were trying to talk to your parents about, they could have got the help, but they didn't want to talk about it. And they was like, I don't want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. But they had to be placed in a position, thank God for the judge and the attorney, who said no. And they had to come to counseling and therapy, and they had to hear what was going on. because there's no way you can receive healing if you have not if there's no revealing.
Right.
You have to reveal the root of things and what's going on with you before it can be healed. So when your parents was forcing that, so let's just talk about the sessions. After, you're going through these sessions, they're forced now to hear what happened with you. What was the results of that?
My parents are the type of, you need to just get over it.
Oh, wow.
You
love that.
It happened. We don't need to talk about it. Just move on. Don't bring it back up. It happened. Move on. That's the way that they've probably been raised and taught to do.
Right.
But I don't feel that way, because if you don't talk about it, if you don't address it, it eats you up. Well, for me, it ate me up. And not only that, I want people to know, I was underage when these things were done, so I'm not a sex offender as an adult, because I was still
underage. You speak of that in your book.
But when you think that it was over, I got saved, started going for Jesus, went to a church, was going through a homeless situation or a transitional, and they told me to stay with the minister of music, a bishop, which is a minister of music. I thought that it was over. Then he sexually abused me, the bishop.
See,
sexually abused me after I fought to get out of all of that.
Right.
Got saved.
Right.
Thinking, okay, this part is
over with.
Then I come in the church, the body of Christ.
Yes.
To have the bishop.
Yeah.
Do the same thing to me.
Now, I tell people there's not much that I hear that surprises me, but it really angers me, because that's not who God is. And that's a misrepresentation of God and his love. And unfortunately, I'm so sorry that happened to you, because I can share in some experiences myself. But unfortunately, again, we were talking about this earlier before the show started, how that's why it's not God's will for you to experience that. But people have free will. And when you talk about not being over, but even the trauma that is carried from the abuse as a child, right? And you're going through all these behaviors, you got through some things in there as an adult. It actually, statistical data actually shows that those that have been sexually abused as a child is more susceptible to having, abuse issues as an adult. So, sometimes you wonder why people act the way they act and why they don't go around certain people or don't do certain things, because people don't understand their backdrop. Now, I don't expect people who have never experienced sexual abuse to understand a survivor.
Right.
I don't expect them to, because when somebody beat on you, that's abuse. But eventually you heal, and there's some trauma that comes with that. But when someone sexually abuses you, they take away everything you have. And I know that because I'm a survivor thriver. And that's why I'm so passionate, and that's why Resuscitate Inc. exists. Because there are people that have been in captivity, and men. I teach at a men's development center every month, 250 or more men every month. And those men are in pain. Those men are hurting. And I know God sent us in there to let those men know that you don't have to remain in bondage.
Right.
There is some freedom. But I want, we're talking, and I know this conversation is hard. I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around it. I know, but many of you, I'm saying that it's hard, but it may not be hard for you to wrap your heads around it, because statistics, 1 in 4 girls, there's varying variations. The largest one is 1 in 13 boys, but 1 in 13 boys is too many boys, right? 1 in 4 boys, 1 in 6 boys, whatever that statistic is. It's happening, and it's happening right in your face, because if you're not equipped, you're not exempt. If you're not equipped, your children are not exempt, even in the name of Jesus. Because we've had this conversation when we talked about prevention in the churches. There are pastors right now that are registered sex offenders. People are protecting them, covering them, and they're in positions because they have access to be predators. And because of these positions, not just pastors, you have elected officials, you have officers, you have doctors. Come on, the Olympic doctor.
Yeah, for the
international, and you have people in high positions of power that don't want us to have these type of conversations, because when survivors begin to share their stories, it helps. Like I said, your story can be the key to help unlock somebody else's captivity. It helps them get a little bit more courage and say, you know what, maybe I need to tell my story. And the more we tell stories, and because stories are being told, now, you said something earlier before we came on. You said you want the devil to be horrified. I said like this: perpetrators begin to shake and shiver because they know that the power of muteness, the silence, keeping you silent, is the power for them to continue to perpetrate.
Right.
Your parents intervened, even though they didn't want to hear it. And like you say, it was only because you got caught because of the learned behavior that you were groomed with and conditioned with.
Yes.
And right now, this is happening to our boys. When we're talking to them in the boundary classes and talking about keeping your hands to yourself. You know, you don't have a right to touch anyone without their permission. And then you have to be careful about that when we try and make it plain to them, because they're not getting this information. When my youngest son was in school, high school, and they had a parent meeting. And that's when cyberbullying first came out, and they started talking about sexting and things of that nature. And they were sharing with us how your child, if they're caught with pictures of their friends, like their breasts or penises, you know, private parts and things of that nature on their phones, the right person get a hold of that they can be charged with possession of child pornography. Well, I asked the question because they called an assembly first with all the students, and they were talking about cyberbullying and different things of that nature, sexting and all of that. I said, well, did you all share that part of the information with the students? They told us no. So how is it you have the general body of students in the school, you talk about everything except for the penalties that can come with the possession? Because kids do what kids do.
Right.
And it's learned behavior. That's why I don't like when people say, these kids these days, hold on. You talked about that array of pornography magazines that I'm almost positive to say that the reason why your neighbor was able to do the things that he did to you, because I believe he has some experience from some things being done to him. I do. And learned behavior. I have another young man that actually shared, because he ended up perpetrating as well. But his violation was from a babysitter. She played a game. So he played the game, and then he went and played the game with a neighbor. And there we have cycles.
Right.
Because we have parents and adults that don't want to talk. They don't want to hear it. And because child sexual abuse is a trauma, is a triggering topic, it is very taboo. And it's triggering because a lot of adults that don't want to hear it, a lot of times have experienced it themselves, and they have hidden and suppressed trauma. And in order to deal with your trauma, I now have to deal with my trauma.
Right.
So I don't want to hear that. Go somewhere else with that. Just shut up and leave it alone. Because you know what? I got to take some responsibility in helping you heal. And right now, I just think that the things that you experienced in your life is unfortunate, and it's not fair, and it's not right. And anybody out here listening to us that have experienced, young men, I'm talking to men today, because my passion is for men to be healthy and whole. And so many of you all have been held captive, but you have a voice and you've been on mute for a long time, and you're wondering why you're not able to hold relationships. You're wondering why you're so angry, why you're so frustrated, why you're so confused, and why you are so depleted in self-esteem. And sometimes trauma causes memory loss. Sometimes you lose memory for so many traumatic experiences. But today, if that is you, I just implore you, you can reach out to Resuscitate. But even if you don't reach out to Resuscitate, you can reach out to Mr. Richardson here, and we're going to have that information on our website. But you can also reach out, get some therapy, get some counseling. Because therapy and counseling does not mean you're crazy or something wrong with you. No, therapy and counseling is an indicator that you want to be at your best and you want to be better. Okay? So that's my word to you. And I wish we had more time, but I want you to share, because it's something you had placed in your book that I think is so great. When you talked about the treatment and all of that, and it was a program for youth. You say here, considering everything, you were unfortunate, you was underage, you repented, you asked for forgiveness for those you hurt, and also forgave those who hurt you, because you had to learn how to forgive yourself, not for what was done to you, but for the things that you had done.
Yes.
Because you'll never, when you are victimized, it is never your fault. That is something we need to share, because the first thing that comes is, oh man, maybe I should have did this, or maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should, all these shoulda, woulda, couldas. But it's never your fault when you're the victim, right? Mm-hmm. But here, I want you to talk about your word of encouragement. What is it, talking to the men, talking to a little boy that might be in earshot of this show, what officials, whomever, what can you say to encourage them, maybe give them in the next 24 to 48 hours, what steps can they take to deal with whatever trauma that they may be dealing with?
I was just thinking about what I could possibly say. And there's a saying that we always say, I'm going to take that with me to my grave. I feel like that should never be a statement that people should continue to say. I think that because I know that according to the Bible, it says that we're all going to have to give an account for what is going on in this body. And I don't want to meet the end and I did not address the issues that were going on that I encountered on this earth. And so I admonish people, or I want people to be able to talk about it, to open up and tell somebody. It doesn't matter, to be honest, it doesn't matter who is going to get hurt.
Yes.
What matters is that you're getting free from what is going on. It might hurt your uncle. It might hurt your parent. It might hurt your mom or your dad. It might hurt your sister and your brother. Because I've know a lot of people with a lot of different situations. Even some of my friends got molested by their brothers and sisters and different family members. But you've got to open up and tell somebody. Do not keep it in. Do not go to your grave holding on to something that happened to you in this earth. Whatever happened to you in this earth, please deal with it. And to a young child, oh man, for someone that is young, that is having a chance to listen, or your parent is there, talk to your parent. If your parents aren't listening, like I have godmothers, I have, and I also have some best friends. Mm-hmm. So sometimes if you're telling your closest friend, open up and tell your closest friend, right. Because sometimes they have a voice, and they will say something about it. Well, such and such this is happening to him.
Right.
Something to somebody. Just open up and say something. Do not be in my position having to sit here or talk about that, or you get a charge on your life, a felony on your life, or you have to register to be a sex offender, when you could just open up and talk about it. And definitely want to also let people know that now with the book, Pastor Robert Marshall created on Facebook, it's called Survival Circle, where it's allowing just men that have been sexually abused. It's on Facebook. It's a private group. And so he talks to you prior to you allowing to be in the group, sharing your story, and he works with you, and then he allows you in the group. And then we have different topics and instructions. Not instructions. What do you call them? Like if they put questions out or feelings out, you get discussions. I don't know what. Discussions about different things and how you're feeling. And now they have a chat where everybody talks every day about what is going on with them, because it's sexual is one, but then there's a lot of people that haven't disclosed to their family, don't know how to do that, and still and a lot of these people in the book are still now having anxiety, all these different things, because now they put this out, and don't know what their family's going to say or somebody's going to say. But you can't worry about that.
No,
you cannot worry about what somebody else is going to say or think. Just talk about it.
Yes.
Just talk about it.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming out. Let me just say this to you all. It's time to break the silence, to break the cycles of child sexual abuse and its trauma. And I appreciate you all. We're going to talk about this more, on other occasions. But this month was totally to bring awareness and to help equip you all with resources, because things don't change until they are challenged. And so we're going to have his information down. He shared with you how to get in that chat on Facebook. But just remember, before you begin to judge, especially these young people, reach in, look a little closer, and begin to ask the right question. And sometimes you may not know what questions to ask, but you can reach out to us as a resource, and we can help guide you and navigate you to the resources you may need. And again, Mr. Richardson, Kendal Richardson, I thank you. And my hat's off to you. God bless you, because it takes courage, it takes commitment, and it takes some character to have this conversation. And I pray, and I'm more than likely sure that somebody got something out to help free them in this hour, and even their sons and their sons' sons. So thank you for being a voice for the people and voice of the people for change. So until next time, I'm Dr. Nicole Lynette. I am your host of the Reach In Talk Show, and we'll see you next time.